Prologue. Change was a bitterness that hung in the air, a madness felt only in fleeting surrenders. It was felt by the breaking of each morning's light, and it clung long through the hush of the evening. It was felt in the candlelit houses of peasants, and in the palaces, caverns, and crypts. It nibbled the nostrils like the bite of a pepper, and it tickled the ear like an eight-legged spectre. The bones of the elders grew angry and stiff from the storm that churned on the distant horizon. The oceans were swelling with murderous intent. The tides were voraciously rising. A black boot splashed into the drowning sand. The ocean dragged at its heels. The man inhaled deeply, letting the foreboding salty ambrosia of death and decay fill his cavernous lungs. The ocean broke around him, soaking the mass of his thick raven cloak and chilling his flesh to the bone. Sea foam clung to his mane of coarse black hair and beard, matting both against his broad, heaving chest. His muscular shoulders rolled back, and he tilted his sallow face to the sky. He surrendered his sodden oar to the surf and staggered just for a second, his knees fighting against the tempestuous current. Behind him, the ocean glistened with moonbeams and starlight, an undulatory swirl of cosmic flirtation. The man held both hands out for a moment, taking in the delicious sensation. His dinghy lapped at his thigh. It had been 35 years since his feet had last touched the mainland. It felt strange, unfamiliar, thorny. But his time on the island had ended. He had been charged by those who must not be denied. His body was no longer his own. His life was no longer his own. His eyes were no longer his own. He felt the sand sinking beneath his blistered toes, the rush of the wind through his tangled tresses of salt-crusted hair. Dark circles drooped beneath his milky white eyes. He had not slept in 6 days. He listened to the poetry of the waves crashing down along the stretch of beach, the rolling percussion of erosion and cleansing. He gazed into the rushing indigo winds that blinded and allowed him to see. The man lowered his hands. From the boat beside him, he procured a satchel and a sword. He fastened the effects to his wide back and took a labored step through the surging water. The bag held supplies for a month of hard travel. The sword hung down to his knees, its blade nearly the width of his thigh. The man stood well over 2 meters tall, and the sword nearly met his dimension. It was an ancient weapon, one forged to sting foes far more formidable than man. It dug into his shoulder, but he did not notice the weight. Thick sand clung to his boots, his trousers wept with the sea they retained, but he did not slow his gait. His dense cloak dragged in the water behind him, but he did not notice the hindrance. His murdered eyes fixed on the town on the hill, the ancient ruin of shorn brick and lonesome abutments. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply again. For a moment, a flicker of radiant blue and white flashed beneath his eyelids. He was here. A burst of laughter, singing and torchlight streamed from a suddenly opened door. He turned his head toward the sound and made his way toward the town. Cath was a sleepy old port, the southernmost town in the west. Its people were quiet and salty, mostly fishermen, merchants, and fishwives. A ramble of ocean stone ruins, the city was more drowned than it was dry. Each year it crumbled deeper into the blue of the sea, but its residents refused to retreat. They patched up their rubble and kept on with their business, determined to withstand the tides. To the common traveler, Cath offered the last proposition of civilization and provision before the untamed jungle of Baragat. No railroad had yet been built to conjoin the small harbor to the rest of the trading cities in the north, so life persisted as it had for millennia. Fishermen came and went from the Fosse Sea, bringing in their rich netted bounties, exhausted from battling interminable tropical winds. Merchants from the far reaches of the country bumbled through with their carts of exotic treasures and wares, weary from laborious passage. Haggard trappers wandered in from the jungles, taking rare pelts and cured meats toward Dakari, the largest trading hub on the coast. To all, Cath served as a respite, an oasis of warm mead and soft beds in a rough world of little semblance. Within this reprieve of life's turbulent passage, there was no greater shelter of solace than the old sunken skipper's saloon, or as the locals preferred, the old Triple S. Even in the darkest hours of the bleakest nights, the windows of the Triple S shone triumphantly through the slog of repetitiousness. Her raucous, stomping shanties swam through the cobbled streets like rogue starlight, and shouts of joyous laughter echoed all the way to the hills. Inside, the air was thick with kinship and merriment. The bar top was sticky, the minstrels were sloppy, and the floorboards were piss-stained, the beloved accoutrements of revelry. On this particular night, the pub was packed from stem to stern with jubilant, red-faced carousers, all singing indiscernibly with the band's riotous tune. The cacophony of jolly hollers and clamor could not have been tamed by a tembler. Like the crack of a pistol, the door slammed against the saloon's old rotten wall, and a chill pierced the hearts of the patrons. Heads turned toward the entering creature, and voices fell still in their mouths. The singing died out in an instant, the very warmth of the establishment receding to the corners and escaping up the rickety stairs. The man lumbered into the tavern. His frame was so large that he had to lower his shoulder to enter, and his head scraped the top of the ingress. The onlookers pushed away from the man, giving him a considerable berth and eyeing the great sword on his back. A shiver went down the odd spine, and some swallowed lumps in their throats. The silence of death fell upon them, and the man scanned the room with intention. Somebody shattered a glass. The man stared through the swirling streaks of indigo and obsidian that clouded his vision, filtering through muted black forms and wandering spirits. He inhaled in short, rapid bursts, searching for some sort of aura. A sudden tickle in his nose caused his body to freeze. He inhaled again to be certain. "There's a memory here," he realized. "Somebody knew him, but only briefly." Then he launched into action. A few sailors grasped for the hilts of their knives. Others leapt through the nearest open window, tumbling into the refuse piled in the alley. The man moved about the pub systematically, sniffing each patron's stiff, sweaty brows, following the scented trail of long and distant remembrance. His crusted beard scraped on the heads of each passing subject, and they winced away from his hulking mass, praying he would not devour them. He paused on the head of a young man, a lad of only 18, who had been drinking with a few of his mates. The boy, who went by the name of Prado, looked into the man's milky eyes and gulped. Can I help you, sir?" he stammered. The man stared into his face and spoke a language that he didn't understand. "Duyaka bromhidri." What? The man did not answer the question. Instead, he gripped Prado's temples with both of his hands and dragged a coarse, dry tongue across his trembling forehead. Prado nearly fainted. The man let go of the boy and staggered back. He closed his eyes, and those who could see his face gasped. Behind his lids, a brilliant blue light flittered to life. The man lost himself in Prado's memory, watching the images flicker and take shape. The features were hazy, the happenings old, but he drew out the faces and forms. He looked up into the icy blue eyes. He took in the warmth of the smile. He felt the rough hand and the squeeze of reassurance. He saw the back turning away. Then he flashed forward in time, to the middle of the subsequent night, and saw the town from a highly placed window. He saw the great ship taking flight from the harbor, its silhouette eclipsing the moons, its long shadow darkening the rounded window frame as it passed. He saw it soar over the hilltops and trees and disappear into the space between stars, the memory disappearing with it. The man opened his eyes, turned abruptly, and left through the old saloon door. Behind him, Prado hesitantly followed, roused by the memories he had nearly forgotten. "Who are you?" he shouted. The man took off down the street, not seeming to notice his query. "Hey, stop! Where are you going?" asked Prado, continuing his meager pursuit. The man stopped after a few paces, glancing up into the sky. He inhaled deeply again and jerked his head to the right. "He went north," the man said to himself, and bolted onto a side street, making his way toward the hills. "Why do you seek that man? If you are a true Shojin, you will answer me!" Prado had spied the mark on the hand, the sign of the mystical brotherhood. If it was a true signifier, the monk was tied to a strict code of honor, to help those in need above anything else. Why do you seek him?" The man froze in his tracks. Prado halted behind him. In a second, he had the boy by the collar and slammed against the nearest brick wall. Prado gasped at the powerful hands, and his feet kicked wildly beneath him. "I do not seek him," the man said calmly, in a voice as deep as it was rough. "Then why do you pilfer my memories? Why do you look for his visage?" The man's clouded eyes examined the boy's youthful face. A pain flashed across his expression. "I do not seek the aeronaut boy." He paused, looking down for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes shone as bright as the moon's, a radiant blue and white energy swirling about them. Prado's heart leapt into his throat, and the air around them turned as cold as the dark lands. "I hunt him,"